You love it.
Was geht ab?
Was geht up?
Was geht ab?
Cheers, bruv.
Cheers, bro.
To another episode, Lattes Wisdom.
Yes, sir.
How you been? Nice trip back to the homeland?
Good. I just got back 2 days ago, so a little bit jet lagged, but...
Notes from a fellow traveller.
What's that about, man?
It is... So a mentalist, considering we always talk about mental and the universe being mental, it's a mentalist. So he's a magician, performer, stage performer, called Derren Brown. He's from the UK. And this is like his personal journal of when he was on tour about things that he's learned over the past 30 years worth of performing on stage, breaking down his methods, how to connect with the audience. And I find it very interesting for a performance perspective for me, but also just the deeper meanings of things, of how to connect to the audience, how to connect to people. And he has been a big influence on my life. Yeah.
Wow.
Really
Anything in particular? Or a couple of things?
A lot of the mentalism tricks that he does have a psychological kind of twist to them, where he plays on people's body languages. He plays on, he's going to divine the number that you're thinking of based on talking to you and noticing eye movements and stuff. And a lot of that is showmanship, but there's also some truth to it as well. And I find it fascinating. I was absolutely obsessed with this guy in university. I would learn his magic tricks. I got interested in magic through following his kind of trajectory. He used to be on Channel 4, which is like one of our TV networks.
Back in Swindon.
Yeah.
Damn, bro.
Yeah, he's super interesting. This book's awesome. This is the most expensive book I've ever bought as well. There's a limited run. Yeah, it cost me like $100 and something.
This specific version of it, or the book in general?
I think, well, I mean, this book might not make very much sense to people that aren't magicians, and I'm not a magician, obviously, but from a performance perspective, I find there's a lot of parallels to how I can connect to my audience better when I'm DJing.
So give me one.
Well, for example, the last chapter that I just read, he's talking about being able to switch it on certain nights. So if he's doing the same show over the course of 30 days, for example, or he's doing a tour around the UK and it's the same show because they've scripted it, etc., you have to still be able to present that naturally, even though it's scripted. And he says that some days you are not necessarily perhaps your mood's changed on one day versus the next. And he says to lean into that, because the authenticity of if you've had a bad day or a good day, or someone's bumped into your car, or you tripped up, or you hit your toe on something. He says to take all of these things into the show, because it gives you an aspect of real, which is super interesting, because again, as a DJ, I notice that kind of a thing when I'm playing. Like the adrenaline can take over, and the music always makes me feel some type of a way. But in terms of being able to connect to individual people and to sense the energy in the room, and to know when it's going good and when I need to take it up a notch, or sometimes it can be easier when I've got friends in the booth, because then I can be like, the show is for them. And I can, even if I've had a drab or a boring day, or an average day, let's say, having my mates in the booth gives me that natural buzz, and I can just be like, oh, it's a house party kind of vibe. I'm doing this for us kind of thing. Not to mean like I'm not connected to the crowd, but sometimes naturally your mood can affect your performance of something. You know this from playing football. Like if you've had a day where you've had an argument with the missus or whatever, it may affect your game, because that's what you're thinking about rather than the moment that you're in. So in order to bring us back into being present, he says lean into the natural kind of human tendencies that you have and actually use them to your advantage, as opposed to, placing too much emphasis on them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. But how does he also say how to do that practically? Let's say you you go through the day. I know, for example, for myself, when I play soccer and my mood is not as cheerful as it usually is, I play less creatively and less confidently.
Mm-hmm.
So I know just from the way I play, I take on players less. I make risky passes less.
Mm-hmm.
I shoot less. And overall, my decision making is less creative and more safe. I've observed that so many times.
Do you notice that in the moment then?
In
You're
the
like,
moment.
"Oh, I wish I was doing...
I know when I warm up. When we do the warm up, I already know when I'm on the ball, the way I give you the ball in the warm up or shoot at our goalie to warm him up. I know exactly how creative my game is going to be that day. And it's directly correlated to my mood when I come there. Not just my mental mood, but also how I feel physically. If I feel heavy and tired, I'm so preoccupied with that feeling that I'm like, oh man, I'm not feeling right and I'm playing. So that's always blocking the creative flow. Whereas when you feel good, you don't have to expend that energy resource on monitoring how you feel because you just feel good. So it seems like almost that energy just manifests itself creatively because it doesn't have to go elsewhere. And so I'm just very curious to see that if you have a day where you feel heavy or sad or whatever, how to channel that, or what he means by leaning into that. Is it just not rejecting that feeling, kind of just sit there with your feeling?
Feeling through it gives you more authenticity, and then because of that, you're able to connect with the crowd more because they can sense when you're faking it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the main kind of...
So don't try to mask it.
No.
Just play from it.
No. Play through it. Play with it even.
Yeah.
That's what I'm taking from it. It's just, I mean, to some degree, we're all trying to show up as our best self, even on days when we don't feel like our best self, or, you know, when something's happened to us or something's going on in our family or you know, whatever the given situation is. Mm-hmm. We always try and, or at least we would hope, that we always try and show up as best a version of ourselves as we can be.
Yeah.
But that should not be at the avoidance of feeling the way that we feel. The actual being of yourself and including how you feel emotionally and being honest with yourself and sharing that actually will get you through the process of whatever the feeling is more smoothly and more quickly, I would argue.
Yeah.
If you embrace it than if you try and kind of mask it up or say, no, I'm good.
Yeah, that's the first instinct for people, right? It's like,
yeah,
I'm just going to brush it off and I'll just...
Well, because you think you can take it on.
Yeah.
So it's good, I got this, you know?
Well, you also don't want other people to see you that way, right? There's that too, especially as a performance. Like, you stand for joy and energy and parties. Like, I cannot bring that to the stage, man. So for you, even more so than... But even for a regular person, I feel when they go in there with their friends, very rarely do they feel comfortable showing that side of them. And it reminds me a little bit, just sitting there and observing how you feel. It could be almost combined with spinning the way you feel based on giving it a different perspective. So you could actually sit there and say, hey, I feel like this because of this, and that. But then you can take the reasoning and shift your perspective to that reasoning and probably don't let that emotion consume you to that extent, but look at it from a different angle rather than trying to brush it off and that thing gets louder on its own because you're not giving it the attention. Because every emotion has some underpinning, has some reasoning, right? So rather than saying, I'm not feeling it and lying to yourself and letting that grow, you could sit there, listen to it, kind of like trace where it comes from, and then, well, this is kind of like what we do all the time, then shifting the perspective on it and say, the reason I'm feeling like this is because of this, but I'm looking at it microscopically. If I actually stand back and look at it, then I might have a different perspective. So maybe going through the process of it maybe does that. I don't know.
I think that's exactly what it is. I think that it's just sometimes difficult to be that objective with yourself. Mm-hmm. I remember reading somewhere, I can't remember where it was, but I think it was something saying like, it's almost impossible for us to objectively assess ourselves because our ego will always get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
But there's got to be a but to that, right?
Right. It is. That's why under relaxation, it's the easiest, I feel, when you're in a meditative state.
How do you be in the meditative state, though? If you're worked up about something's got on your nerves or stressed you out or whatever the word, and you're on fight or flight, you're on fight. Other than like breathing techniques, like what's the practical way to? It's going to be a problem-solving episode, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think it's always the basics, man. It's
breathe through.
Well, it's first of all, you have to be aware of something before you can change it. As long as you're on autopilot, then you're going to be like the torero, the bull running into the red flag or whatever that is. And becoming aware of it, I think, is a conscious decision and repetitive practice. The more you do it, the more you're able to catch yourself when you're on that autopilot, and you're able to give it a higher perspective, knowing that, well, that's, your man of the five senses just going crazy, survival mode. That's really what it is, right? There's some emotion underlying that. It's typically fear. You can always break down most of these stressful situations to fear. And becoming aware of that is already the first step. And the second step is doing the things that we know now from science that work. Breathing, different breathing techniques. I like Wim Hof's, the hyperventilative breathing that really helps me to calm down. I like just meditating. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put a clock for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and I'm just going to...
It's like giving yourself a timeout almost, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's, I think, the reason religions ask for prayers. It's because of that, because they know we fall into the patterns of autopilot. So the religious practices, whether it be meditation or traditional prayer, it's typically dictated by the book, right? And so I think there's some value in that, and you can do that for yourself. You don't need the book to do it. If you have enough discipline, you can remind yourself to do it. You can even set a timer to do it regularly.
Set a reminder on your phone, yeah.
Yeah, you can do that. And then finally, what always helps me, there's meditation in the traditional sense where you just kind of sit or lay down in a relaxed state. And, you try to not focus on anything for however many minutes you decide to do that for. For me, the other meditative state is hardcore physical exhaustion. So when I'm boxing for an hour, that's also a meditative state, because I don't have the capacity to think about anything else, because I'm emulating the survival mechanism when I'm at boxing. But that only works for me when I do an exercise that pushes me above and beyond my limits. The moment I just walk a little bit, or I just do a bit of weights, in the breaks I'm thinking about stuff again, But when I'm doing hardcore exercise, like running fast on the treadmill for 45 minutes, 30 minutes, if I'm boxing, my mind doesn't even have the excess capacity to think about it. So that's a meditative state, because you're only doing that, you're zoned in, and you come out and you haven't thought about it in like 45 minutes or an hour. On top of that, you have proven to yourself that you're worthy of something because you overcame a crazy challenge. So it gives you a confidence boost. So the problem then, relatively speaking, to yourself seems smaller.
Correct, yeah.
Because you gave it less attention, but also because now you're grander than you were before. So I think it comes down to being disciplined and being repetitive with these practices. And the more you do it, the more you catch yourself early on. The less you have to do these things proactively. The more it's just second nature to you. Okay, I see what's happening again. What's going on here? Let me break this down. So you're immediately putting a leash on that smaller self of you that's just going based on pure instinct and reaction and fear. Your grander self kicks in and says, okay, hold on a second. So I think that's just, it's continuous practice. You just keep doing it. You get better with it, like with everything else.
Have you always been as disciplined as you are now?
I would say yes, but only with the things that were fun for me or the things that I had to do. And I'm saying had to do because most of my life I was following the things that my rational mind was telling me were right to do. And many of those were based on what my parents thought were right for me. So go get a get your bachelor's, get your master's, get your doctorate. So boom, 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 boom.
Strict parents.
Dude, Persian parents. If you're not a lawyer or doctor, dude, it's you're a failure. You have to at least surpass your parents' level of education. So, and when you're in these programs, honestly, education was always fairly easy to me. But you still have to study for exams, and you have to, kind of listen when you're in class. You have to get up, go to class. You have to be somewhat structured in this, but that was not a structure that came from a desire. It was very much attached to the end goal that I have to get this degree. Whenever you have that setup, it's much, much harder to be structured and conscientious. Because again, like we spoke about this last time, it doesn't come from your soul, right? That's a mind-created goal, not a heart-created goal. And that was one. The other things that came to where structure came easy for me were the things I value. Everything you value, it almost seems like second nature becoming structure with it. Physique, diet. Like for me, that was very important. I wanted to be healthy and I wanted to be shredded. So that's like, okay, I'm going to fast for 72 hours. Only going to eat, from 3 p.m. to, I don't know, 9
Crazy
p.m.
man.
Yeah, dude. Like that stuff, that discipline came very easy because it was attached to something I really value. But with other stuff, not so much. And then I realized one thing I neglected a lot was the strictness or the discipline when it came to my thoughts and my beliefs and my emotions. I always thought, well, that's normal. You feel a certain thing. You're not getting the job, or I don't know, man, you didn't win that soccer game, or the shirt you ordered is too small, whatever it may be. Some real life event causing you to feel a certain thing, that's normal. Until I realized, dude, I need to freaking treat this with even more discipline than I treat my diet and my education and my body, almost like it's a mental diet. Every thought and every emotion, every belief that comes in, it's almost like you deciding what you're feeding your mind. So you can feed it processed food, negative emotions, bad beliefs. You can let external events control what you think. That's the bad diet. The good diet is, again, abstracting from your smaller self and having the perspective of your grander self and deciding, does this thought align with where I want to go? Does this belief align with where I want to go? Yes, no? Well, then away with it and think like you want to think. But that's harder than any diet, actual diet, or exercise. It's way harder because it's 24/7. It never stops.
The moment you wake up.
The moment you wake up.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you sit, you drive, something comes to your mind. Okay, hold on, why did I think that?
Yeah. You have to be constantly kind of screening it almost.
Well, you almost have to be 100% convinced that every thought you have in your head is going to dictate how your life goes. Only then are you going to value each thought to the extent where you're interested in working on it so much, right? If you think, well, yeah, thoughts kind of matter, but not really, then you're going to be like, you let this one pass. But if you're convinced, if you've educated yourself enough to the extent that you understand what's going on within is the thing that dictates your life to the fullest, more than anything else, then you're going to be like almost afraid of when a thought comes in. Dude, this is going to manifest. Let me make sure. It's like you ate that bad food. That's toxic, That's going to cause something in your body. You have that thought, dude, this is going to cause something in my life that I don't want. I'm going to attract that. So once you get to that point, you're going to be much more inclined to be disciplined with observing your thoughts. And then at some point, if you do this over and over and over, again, second nature. Something comes in your head, you might let it go for a couple of seconds on autopilot, and then you're like, hold on, man. Why am I thinking this? Again, you're never going to be perfect, but you're going to be faster at breaking that.
Yeah, you got to go in and snip it almost, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've noticed that sometimes I can go into thought loops, I want to call them, like I don't know how to describe it. When you get caught in something, or especially when you're on a scroll or something, you look in and you're like, hang on a minute, I've been doing that for like 15, 20 minutes. Yeah. I've got lost in something else.
Yeah.
And your thoughts then go off and wander off in different directions, and then you can come out of it and be like, wait a second, what have I just done?
Yeah.
We're going to be at the mercy of what's going on unless we take control of it.
Correct. And I think it comes back to the narrative that it's not the physical world that dictates your state within. It's the other way around. Your state within is going to dictate.
That's such a radical thing to say, though, to most people.
Yeah, it is.
To say, like, this is an illusion and you need to kind of snap out of what's going on out here and turn the focus back on you. Most people, myself included, have gone through this phase of most of my life, honestly, pointing out, that happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And this change of, like, it happened for me, and to just take responsibility of that, again, through abstracting myself and trying to see things from a grander perspective, and then actually realizing that it always does work out in the end. That was a big leap for me. And it still kind of feels a little bit unnatural because, I mean, this is the real world. But I know that I'm also the one that's co-creating that.
Yeah.
Based on the way that I bring myself into it, like the torus shape, I know that on days where I'm in a great mood, I experience greatness from other people because of the energy that I bring in it, and I'm emitting, or whatever the word is. People feel that and react with that, and then we both are kind of happy or joyful or, excitable or whatever the word is.
Yes. And the other way around, right?
Absolutely. If I'm down in the dumps about something, and you draw the same kind of it's like you notice that.
Yep, absolutely. And your frequency always speaks before you actually speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So really, it comes down to how do you feel most of the time, and are those feelings, emotions, and beliefs, do those align with where you want to go in life? And if they don't, then you have to change your state from within. And I feel like it's radical up until you realize that everything you have in the present moment is just a result of what was going on within you previously.
Yeah.
If you just do that thought experiment and you look at everything in your life, your personal relationships, your romantic relationships, your professional life, your health, your desires, whatever that may be right now, and you break it down, it's what you believed over time in the past that has crystallized up at this point.
Yeah.
So when you do that, then the idea of as within, so without is going to make more sense. Because I feel like what I used to struggle with a lot is realizing that there is a time lapse between your internal state and the manifestation in the three-dimensional realm, in the physical world. Because not every thought, not every emotion immediately crystallizes in the physical world. Only the ones that are persistent and that are emotionally loaded. So any thoughts that you have that are filled with emotion and that you believe over and over and over again, they're going to manifest. And if you think about your world right now, it's essentially a physical summary of what you believe to be true internally across all these different domains in your life. And for me, realizing that, it gave me maximum responsibility for the present moment, because this present moment is the internal state of my present moment is going to dictate my expression tomorrow and the days after.
The book that you told me to read, what I'm listening to, of course, mentions the present moment and calls it the present moment, the moment that was what it was before you had a feeling about it.
Yeah.
And I loved that.
Yeah.
I had to pause that, rewind it, and listen to it again. And I heard that while I was watching the sunset in California. I'm sat in this little cave, got my earpods in, and the book, obviously, Conversations with God. Dude, that struck me like lightning. Present moment, I mean, yeah, it's linguistics, but it's beautifully put. A present moment, the moment that you're in before you have your perspective on it. My perspective would be different to someone else's perspective, et cetera, et cetera. But the moment was the moment before any of us had a feeling about it. Mm-hmm. We're there. Mm-hmm. So then if you then can take control of how you perceive a moment, based on being as aware as possible,
Right.
as grateful as possible about even being able to be alive and to experience it, the chances of that. And if you want to make it like, all right, well, Big Bang up till now, 14 billion years worth of evolution, for us to even get to this point, through all of the ancestors that have come before us, through all of the hardships, to be able to be sat there with AirPods in, looking at a sunset in a cave in California.
Yeah.
The present moment.
The preset moment.
Honestly, it was such a banger for me.
Yeah. And I think you have that same choice to be aware of an event that could be interpreted as something negative as well.
Mm-hmm.
So your moment was a beautiful moment. You had the sunset and you took that in, and it was a beautiful moment. And at the same time, you could be in the moment and, I don't know, something can happen that would typically annoy you.
Mm.
And you can be aware of that, and you can interpret that moment based on your perspective, right? And typically your perspective is directly correlated with your belief system. So whatever you believe about yourself, your perspective is going to put its antenna out and seek within the event in the three-dimensional world the bits and pieces that map onto your belief system, because we always want to be right about what we believe, because it's an easier process to maintain internally. Every time you have to change, every time you are not right about something, you would have to change your belief. And evolutionary speaking, it's a thing that creates novelty, chaos, and unknown. So we try to hold on to our beliefs. That's what people love to defend their ideas. It's because it allows them to have emotional security to some extent, be it positive or negative, doesn't matter. So if your belief system is something negative, like I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, then your perspective is going to be one that the lens that you put on, you can think of it that way, is going to be one that sees the events in your external world in a way that confirms your pre-existing belief system. So when something happens, it's like, I knew, they were not smiling at me today in the coffee. It's because, everyone is like that to me.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it.
You assign the meaning afterwards.
Yes. So it's always like, see, I knew that was the case. So that's the addiction of all of us. We always want to be like, see, I knew that was the case. But you can also say that and be like that with something positive. If you think that, oh man, I'm the luckiest guy in the world, and something happens, it's like, dude, see, I knew, I'm always lucky. This is what you want to be. That's what everyone wants to be. But that requires for you to change your belief system. How do you change that? That's the difficult part about it, because those belief systems are so deeply embedded in your subconscious mind, and most of the day, over 90% of the day, is on a subconscious level.
Yeah, same thoughts as the day before.
Same.
We said it before, didn't we?
Exactly. So you go through life with your subconscious level programmed in a way that, I'm not worthy, I'm not this, I'm not healthy, no one likes me, I'm not smart. And then, that's the lens you decided to put on.
Watch that be exactly what your experience is.
Of course. So then you're going to walk through the day, and you're going to depict the events in a way that they map onto your pre-existing beliefs. So how do you change your beliefs? You have to change your subconscious. How do you change your subconscious? We talked about it last time, right? It's anything. You can only change your subconscious mind in a relaxed state when you are aware of you have to become aware of the things that are going on within you first. And then anything that has an emotional load is going to go straight into your subconscious. So for example, if you have one negative event, it can lead to PTSD if it's heavily emotionally charged. So anytime there is an emotion, the subconscious opens its door. And when you're relaxed, the subconscious opens its door too. And that's why meditation, like Joe Dispenza always speaks about meditation, go into the relaxed state, and then you feel the things that you want to feel, because the combination of relaxation and emotional load are going to go straight into your subconscious. And what's in your subconscious is going to reprogram your belief system. When you reprogram your belief system, your thoughts, your emotional state, your perception, all of that is going to change. But it takes some time. You have to do that over and over and over again. And the requirement for that is you being willing and courageous enough to be honest with yourself. You have to look into the things that program your subconscious, and most of that stems from childhood. It's whatever operating system your parents put onto you. Because as a kid, you're exactly that. You're in a state of just being. You're somewhat relaxed. You're in a playful state. And your prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, so you react very emotionally to stuff. They give you ice cream. Like, oh, I'm so happy I'm getting ice cream. You have to do homework. I don't want to do homework, right? So you're purely acting out of emotion. So in that state, everything that's happening to you is going straight to your subconscious. Whatever your parents believed you are, whatever they thought of you, typically is what you believe about yourself, if you haven't worked on that.
And that comes often from who they believe they are. They imprint that then on you, and you pick up on it like a sponge.
And they got that from their parents.
Absolutely.
Their parents got that from them. So that's why generational trauma, that's exactly what it is. The degree to which your parents haven't processed their own shortcomings, to that degree, that's going to be imprinted on you as a kid. But to the same degree, you are responsible to resolve that, because otherwise it's a pattern of passing it on plus some, passing it on plus some. It's going to get harder with each iteration of not resolving those issues. And that's why I love the story of the heroic calling. You're doing it for you, but you're also doing it as a result of your ancestral past.
The heroic calling, is that similar to the hero's journey?
The hero's story.
Same, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're called to something.
Yes.
And then you say, no, I don't want to do that. And then you realize, I've got to do it though. It's a calling for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
You go into the unknown.
Yeah.
You find some mentor. I mean, that seems to be the way. It's kind of the same as when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. But you don't get to that point without taking the steps in that direction. You have to move out of comfort and into the darkness. You have to kind of face your shadow. Let's keep using all the jargon, but it's like, there's a reason why it's jargon. There's a reason why cliches are cliches, because they're proven that over time that is the way it is, and you have to face things.
You do. Carl Jung said, you will find what you most need where you least want to look. And where you least want to look are the things you're most afraid of. And what you're most afraid of is also dictating your life to the greatest extent, because it's so deeply imprinted in your subconscious that it programs everything you do, bridged by beliefs, thoughts, and emotions, because actions are the last step.
We've got to find the hard things, do what we're fearful of, or at least it's not even about necessarily doing what we're fearful of. Then it's about one, not lying to ourselves, and two, understanding what we're fearful of.
Mm-hmm. That's
unveiling it.
Yeah.
And choosing to not be under the control of it, which takes, breaking habits or breaking patterns that you may have, that are holding you back.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Even if you don't want to, even if they provide comfort, or, whether it's eating chocolate biscuits or...
Yeah. I think it all of that typically, if you think back to the root of all of it, it's somewhat related to fear of something. So I think the first step is being willing to do that, because it's very, I feel like for the longest time, I would just put it in a corner.
Like a deal with it tomorrow kind of thing?
Yeah, deal with it tomorrow, and you don't really want to face it. The things that you're so afraid of, you don't want to face. So when you're saying, just facing it, the more you're afraid of it, the less you want to face it, because the bigger is that dragon. But also equivalent to that, the higher is your responsibility to face it. Because that thing in itself, if you think about it, if you just zoom out of you as an individual being and just look at yourself as a point in a timeline that connects the past to the future via the present, and you being a link.
I like to think of it like that,
mm-hmm.
rather than this, rather than it being linear.
Okay.
to know that all time is happening all at once, as opposed to it being a past, present, and future. It's just a present.
Well, yes, I'm just talking from a strictly evolutionary perspective. I think most people would view, evolution as a regular timeline.
Yeah, but we're breaking the mold here.
Right, but here's something that helped me take care of this issue.
Okay.
And that was when I saw myself as a genetic linkage between the past to the future. What we want evolutionarily is to pass on our genes. Now, the less we face the things that are difficult but necessary, the more that poses a threat to our genetic pool being passed on. Why? If you think about how we got here, and you spoke about this earlier, we got here through iterations of evolution where our ancestors faced the thing that one would be afraid of the most straight in the eye.
Saber-tooth tiger.
Yeah, physical
Literally,
survival.
yeah.
It's physical death, literally, right?
Yeah.
So that was, the Vikings trying to come and kill you, not finding food, dying of cold, whatever that might be. That was actual physical survival and death that your ancestors faced straight in the eye, but not just faced it, they also overcame it. Mm-hmm. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
If they didn't have the survival,
that's grounding as well to remember that kind of
correct.
stuff.
So if they didn't have the survival capabilities, you wouldn't be here. Okay, so they did the thing that they were most afraid of during their time, and they passed on the genetic composition to you. So by definition of you being here, you have the capability to transcend the thing that you're most afraid of. Now we live in a time where the physical survival is not current anymore. We don't have to worry about freaking lion coming and killing us, right? We don't have to go on hunt. We go to 7-Eleven, we go to freaking McDonald's, we eat something. Don't have to worry about that. But we still have that potential within us to overcome the things we're most afraid of. And then you can think, well, what's the 2024 version of the thing we're most afraid of that resembles what our ancestors were most afraid of?
Sending an email. But it is for a lot of people, right?
I would say
it's like, I've got to deal with something on your phone most of the time.
Well, I would say maybe on some level, but deeper than that, it's what are you afraid of the most from a mental plane? Because the mental and the physical are connected. They dealt with the physical plane at the highest level.
We're in the age of information
now,
yeah.
Okay? Mm-hmm. So we don't have to deal with that anymore. But what we do have now is the mental plane.
Yeah.
So what are you afraid of the most mentally? And that could be most afraid of speaking in front of people. It could be most afraid of being honest with myself. Most afraid of being honest with other people. I think that's something for me that was one of the main switches in my life, was understanding that I was actually afraid of being truthful to myself and to other people at all times, no matter how small I thought that little lie was.
The tiniest little white lie.
Yeah, so
very similar for me.
So, for example, it was a very, very basic one, and I come from a Persian culture where you always try to keep face. You want to be aware of your face. What do other people think of you? So you always frame a message in a way that's polite and that other people look at you favorably. So let's say you text me and say, wait, let's go for dinner tomorrow. And let's say I don't feel like going. So one easy way out would be, oh, bro, I'm sorry, I already made plans for tomorrow, so I can't make it. The other would be, I tell you, you know what, I just want to have some time for myself this weekend, and I don't really feel like doing that. So back then, a lot of these smaller, I call it smaller decisions, but they're actually big decisions because they extrapolate to a bigger level too, would be, I would tell you, you know what, I kind of made plans tomorrow and I don't know. Why would I go that way? Because I don't want you to think of me in a certain way. I want to keep a positive self-image. So I tell you something to keep that image, keep my image within you. Now, if I do it the other way, if I'm just fully honest with you, there's two possible outcomes. One thing could be, he's a freaking idiot, he's what kind of guy is that? He's arrogant. Screw him. And the other one would be, dude, he's like so honest with me. He could have said anything he wanted to, but he chose to be honest. I respect him even more than before. Each one of those outcomes is perfect for me. Why? Because the first outcome, you would be someone that doesn't value my honesty. So that means you'd probably be dishonest with me in the same situation and other situations. Whereas the other one would be, dude, now you have an even higher level of respect for me because I chose to tell you the truth. So realizing that and how that applies to everything in your life, that was a huge change for me because you naturally seed out the events and the relationships that don't map with how you want to go through life when you realize you want to go through life honestly, fully honestly. And at the same time, it strengthens your bonds and it brings events to you couldn't even think of before that because you go based on the cardinal value of truth. Because what you do in the former case, you're using your rational mind to deceive yourself. You're like, hey, I want to speak the truth, but also I don't want him to think of me. So your mind is going to create this narrative. What can I do to kind of dance the limbo?
Keep it sweet, yeah.
Dude, and you have that disconnect between intuition and your rational mind. And that's where everything goes wrong, man. When your heart says one thing and your mind does another thing, boom, you have that disconnect, right? And so that was for me on a mental plane what I was most afraid of. It took me some time to realize it. It took me a couple of years to think about everything that I was doing and thinking to realize, dude, actually this comes all down to this. And again, it comes down to fear. That's why I say everything comes down to fear. Why am I afraid to tell you the truth? To tell you, I don't want to be with you tomorrow because I want to have this. And there's ways to say it. You don't have to say, bro, screw you, You could just say, I'm going through, I want to sit with myself. I want to read a book. Let's do this next week or whenever we feel like it, right? And so the reason you wouldn't say that is because you're afraid of losing the status you occupied within that person. You don't want to be demoted. You want to stay there. So that's a fear. Why am I afraid of that? I'm afraid of that because probably to some extent I don't believe in my own status. So I'm dependent on you giving me that status. That's where the fear comes from, right? So, but realizing that you have to be brutally honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And you do that with everything in your life, day to day. And maybe you have to let go of 90% or 95% of who you thought you were. Because all of that were freaking systems you built for yourself to navigate through a forest of deception.
This is gold. This is exactly how I felt before. I still struggle with this now. Being honest with myself, being honest with others, telling the little to save face. That's so valuable. Why do we do that? It's come from, I get it. It's some sort of an insecurity thing. I understand that. Yeah. And then it's an ingrained pattern. I guess, again, going back to childhood, we are praised for being a good kid.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, we evolved to survive in groups and communities. We weren't individual beings. So we were part of a larger system where everyone in the group had a role. So to some extent, your survival depended on the acceptance of the group. So it's absolutely normal to care for other people's ideas and perceptions of you. To some extent, you define yourself growing up based on the feedback you get from your external environment. It starts with your parents and then goes to your personal relationships, your teachers, your job relationships. Those are mirrors for you to think about who you are in a certain way, right? And so it's extremely difficult to break through that because I think on an evolutionary level, you're playing with the risk of survival or not being able to survive. It resembles rejection from a person, evolutionary speaking, probably speaks to you as not being accepted by a group and sort of you possibly not being able to propagate your DNA because of the exclusion of the group. So it requires it requires a bigger perspective from God, whatever that may be for you, something transcendental, to live based on value and not based on
approval
your
or
rationalization or
Yeah.
your 5 physical senses. Yeah, because the approval part of it, that's you rationalizing how you can maximize them thinking positively about you. That's a survival mechanism, because most people don't go beyond that and ask, why is that the case? You stop there. Like, okay, if I tell you tomorrow I can't because I already made plans with someone. Okay, good. I saved my status with him, But why did I do that? That's where you go into it, and you try to go as deep as you can to break that structure. Well, why do I need that approval? Why is that the case? Why do I need it from him? Because I'm not giving it to myself to begin with everything. In a relationship, when it comes to love, when it comes to attention, it's always you. That other person is just the mirror of what you're lacking.
Yeah.
So why is that the case? Why is it? Well, maybe, you didn't get it from your parents. Maybe you didn't get sort of the confirmation that you're good from your parents. And why was that the case? Well, they did what they thought was right. They had their trauma passed on from the parents, and they raised you for the first time. They didn't know any better. So they treated you that way. And knowing that during childhood, your operating system is, the code is written. Well, that's where the code was written. So just becoming aware of that, man, it's gonna change a lot of ways in which you think and then act based upon those thoughts. And I don't think it ever stops. At least for me, it never stops, because I always catch myself somewhere. To decode yourself is the hardest thing to do, man.
Yeah, it is. Unprogramming yourself, isn't it? But then, and again, I think there's times when around certain people I feel a lot more comfortable than around others, and I try and present myself in slightly different ways around, I want to be more, around certain people, and other people I'm a bit more casual and relaxed. But really, you want to be the same around everyone. You want to bring your natural self around everyone, no matter who they are.
That's how
and
you
that's
win.
Honestly where you get the most. That's how you win.
Yeah, that's how you win.
You don't think about, I need to be some sort of a way around this person because they're more successful, or they have more of a network, or whatever it is. That's then you're placing too much on what you can get out of some type of a situation, rather than being authentic and truthful to yourself.
Well,
which is tough, though.
It's tough, but have you realized how those people are always attractive for other people? Have you realized?
Well, look, think about Elon Musk comes to mind for some reason, like someone who's super disagreeable, but then that really is the magnetism of him.
And I think being disagreeable definitely gets you that attention, but also just being, like you said, authentic and speaking your own truth will do the same thing. You don't have to be going butting heads with everyone else. You can just be the way you are and speak your truth, no matter who's in front of you. People will respect that, man. And the other way around, when you try to always mold to the person in front of you because maybe you really admire that person, or you really want to get the connection with that person, you're much more likely to, put on that show and become more agreeable and say yes and yes and yes.
But that reminds me of relationships, though, like where you go out of your way. Like, say, for example, you've broken up with somebody, and then you're going out of your way to try and, recreate some kind of a situation with them.
Right.
But then you come across needy. And that's the
100%. Bro, that's the least
attractive thing you can do. Like, you
especially
need to
as a guy.
Yeah, you have to take your foot off of that. You have to be about it for yourself in order to create the reality that you need.
Well,
or that you...
Dude, the one with the relationships is perfect, because I see it a lot. So, specifically as a guy, I've seen it a lot with friends of mine. When you desperately want that person back, and typically something started in the relationship, the friends that I have where this happens, they're also the ones chasing a lot in the relationship where it's already out of balance. And when I say chasing, I mean they're constantly in need of some emotion. Receiving that emotion, they're in need to receive that emotion from the other person. They want attention, they want love, they want this, they want that. And, every time you do this, you're signaling a lack of something. I don't have that, so I need that from you. I don't have that, so I need that from you. And so when when the breakup happens, typically that gets magnified. It's like, I really want you back. I really want you back. I really want you back. So you come from a place of, again, need. And every time you come from a place of need, you come from a place of scarcity. You don't have.
That's the signal that you're giving out, literally.
It's a signal you're giving out, right? And what's, in my opinion, what seems to happen is every time you come from a place of desperate need, you're resembling a dependent relationship pattern to the other person. It almost becomes too much responsibility for the other person, because depending on how they behave towards you, they're going to dictate how you feel. If they give you, you're going to be happy. If they don't give you, you're going to be sad. And I think what the actual mechanism it triggers in the other person is the relationship of parent-child.
Mm-hmm.
Because the only person an adult is willing to do that for is going to be for their kid, not for their partner.
Or themselves.
Or, well, yes, if you give it to yourself, then you're doing the right thing, because you're supposed to give it to yourself.
Yeah.
That's not, but
I mean, placing that on them makes them feel like, well, the partner has to look after themselves and then give it to the partner as well in order for them to be happy. That's where the imbalance is.
Right. So if you give that to yourself first, you don't desperately need that from your partner, right? You filled up your cup to the extent where you're good with or without it from your partner.
Yes.
But we're speaking about people who haven't done that. Most of people are. They are in a relationship because they think they're getting something out of that relationship. They're not in the relationship to give. They're in the relationship for need. That's most people. And every time that happens for one of those links, the one that is emotionally more resilient and stable than the other person, it resembles that parent-child pattern. And no one wants to date a man-child or a woman-child. So I think that's where the detachment happens. It's too much responsibility for any adult to be essentially the
mother or father to their partner.
To the partner. Yeah. The one that dictates how they feel. And
we all want to be called daddy in the relationship.
Well, if you're the one being called that, you did it right.
But true.
Yeah, man. And so, again, the thing is pointing at yourself, like, why do I need those things? It comes back to the same thing, like being honest with yourself. Why do I need that? Why do I need that from that person? And I don't think that ever ends. It becomes easier over time. And another thing that I realized is the bigger the thing that you're afraid of and that you're facing, the more it washes out the smaller fears you had. So it's almost like you can start big, and within that big fear, the meta fear, it's called the meta fear, are nested the micro fears. So you don't even know how many of those things that block your life you wash away by processing that. So for me, focusing on always being truthful, first with myself, about myself, then about myself with other people, then about other people with myself, and then about other people to other people. That was the process for me. And so the more I did that, the more I realized, well, I was breaking through things that I didn't even think were related to that.
Yeah.
There's a hierarchy of fears if you want to talk about it like this. There are things I'm more afraid of and less afraid of. But I think the honesty with yourself, it seems to be a universal thing. It's just hard to see that until you really go micro to realize that it's, honesty is directly tied to fear. It's the fear of preserving a status, preserving something, or the fear of losing something that you then allow to manifest in terms of tweaking the truth a little bit here and there to accommodate that fear. But any religious text, is going to tell you that truth is essentially the cardinal value. It's truth and love. Maybe love is truth. I don't know.
I think that's a pretty good. It's poetic, but it's pretty on point.
Yeah, because you choose, when you do that, right? When you actually lay all those eggs in the basket of truth, you're doing that believing, or if you're advanced, not believing, you already know that it's going to do good for you in the long run. And that's believing in love over fear.
Right? Believe in love, speaking the truth.
Yeah.
This is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
love is truth. I like that.
Yeah.
And that resonates with me. It resonates with me in knowing from past experiences when I've felt the most at peace is when I've been telling the truth. You know, even when you get, again, thinking back to like when you were a kid and you get caught doing something, and then you're like, so what happened there? And then you're like, you know, well, you make something up on the spot. But it's the point where it's like, no, tell me the truth. And then you otherwise you carry this burden, you carry this kind of, and you get lost in the web of different kind of lies that you've told until you don't even know what the truth is anymore. But the best people to be around are the ones that and this is again thinking about therapy, for example. To be able to have a regular conversation with somebody, let's say you go to therapy weekly, you are in a place where you feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable, to be honest with yourself, with a person that isn't going to judge you. You hope, you know, if you've got a good therapist.
Yeah.
But that then gives you the most amount of strength because you're able to be saying out loud the things that you've hidden in the corner.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. It's honestly one of the best things about doing this podcast is that we get the opportunity to kind of talk these things out, whatever it is that we're going through in life.
Yes.
It's so important to do that. It gives you some kind of courage, and it's reassuring.
Well, you know, how can you have self-respect if you're not honest with yourself? You're gonna go through life not respecting yourself, and you can be as successful as you are.
And then that plays into your
You can make all the money.
And, yeah.
You can have the status. You can be the freaking CEO. You can be because all of that you can manufacture. You can just be a puppet and become all of that. I don't speak about success when I speak about that. But do you know how many of those people have no self-respect? It's, you know, you have to be honest with yourself to have a level of self-respect. If you have self-respect, you're going to have confidence. You're going to have confidence that is independent of any external visible factors. It's not the car, it's not the house, it's not the hot chick you have, it's not the amount of money you can flash. That's a different level of confidence. That just means, you know, no matter what I'm going to be going through, I'm going to carry within me an ability that transcends whatever that is that I'm facing.
That's integrity.
That is integrity. And you can't buy that. You have to earn that. You have to face.
Well said.
You're within, you know? There is no car you can buy that replaces that. And, you know, when you have confidence, life is going to play itself out favorably for you. If you're confident and you act out of love, you know, you can be confident and do it the other way too. But those are the two things, right?
Facts.
Yes, sir. I think
it's time to crack open a poppy, I think. Cheers, brother.
Cheers, bro.
Welcome back.